Hey there, it's Kenzie from Details to Enjoy, and today I'm going to be making the kits from our July and August size B subscription box. I'm going to be starting with the Here Comes the Sun kit. First, I'm going to paint my insert Silky White by Behr. You could use a foam brush for this, but I went ahead and did this with a foam roller earlier. To paint my words, I'm going to be using a paint tray, some foam brushes, and the colors Scotch Tone by Glidden and Amber Brew by Behr. I'm going to start by getting just a little bit of each color of paint onto my paint tray. You don't need very much for this. When I'm painting, I always like to use thin light coats, and so I'm going to tap off most of the excess paint from my brush and just gently add the paint to my letter. And I'm making sure to keep the edges of all of my pieces black. I just like the look of contrast that it gives, but you could also choose to paint the edges. Because I'm working in such thin coats, by the time I finish the first coat on all of my words, it's already dry and ready for a second coat. Then I'm going to repeat that process, but this time with the Scotch Tone color on my thicker words, again making sure to leave all of the edges black. If I do get any paint on the edges, I just wipe it up with my finger, or if it gets dried on, I can use an alcohol wipe or a sanding block to remove that excess paint. The number of coats will depend on the color, so just keep going until you are happy with the finish. Now that everything is painted and dried, I can go in with my sanding sponges and give them a light sand. To smooth out the finish, you're just going to use the sanding sponge flat against the piece that you're working on and sand lightly. If you do want to add a little bit of distressing, you can go in at a 45-degree angle on the edges of the piece. Then just repeat that process on all of the words, and remember, when you switch colors, you'll want to switch to a new sanding block. Then I'm going to use a clean, dry rag to remove all of the excess dust. To assemble this kit, I'm going to start off by placing my template in the center of my insert. You can always use a ruler if you need to, and then I'm going to secure it in place with some painter's tape. All of our kit pieces have a peel and stick adhesive backing, so I just need to remove this protective layer, and then I can attach this to my insert. So I'm just going to center that into the opening on my template and then press it into place to make sure it is stuck, and repeat that for all of the thicker words. Then I can move on to the thinner words, and I'm going to place these on top of the thicker words, making sure to center them. Once all of the words are attached, I can remove the template. Next, we're going to work on the Stars and Stripes kit, and again, I'm going to start off by working on the insert. For this insert, I'm going to be doing a color wash method, so I need my paint tray, my white paint, this is Silky White by Behr, I need my painting sponge, and a little cup of water. The first thing I need to do is rehydrate my sponge so it's nice and soft. Then I'm going to use the sponge to add a few drops of water to the white paint and swirl it to mix it in with the sponge. This part isn't an exact science, and you may need to play with the amount of water that's in your paint, but once you're ready, you can start to apply the paint to your insert. The goal of our color wash method is to have the texture of the MDF show through, so if your paint is too thick and you aren't seeing any texture, then you can add more water, and if it's too thin, you can always add more paint. While that dries, I can start to work on the Stars and Stripes words, and I'm going to start first with some black paint, and I'm using the larger of the detail brushes to paint the stripes and the plus sign. As usual, I'm working in thin light coats and not painting the sides of my pieces. Next, I'm going to be using Dark Navy and Allure, both by Behr, and I'm using these small detail brushes for this part. I'm just going to paint in the background of my stars word first using the Dark Navy. I'm making sure to avoid where the stars are on these letters, and I'm going to go back in later with some white to paint those in. If I do mess up, it's not too big of a deal because I can always touch it up later, but I'm being as careful as I can. This part can be a little tedious, but it's definitely easier than it looks. Once I'm done with the blue, I can move on to my stripes word. And before you paint in any of the stripes, you want to make sure that your letters are all facing the same way so that the pattern runs all the way through. The easiest way to see this is to compare your I and your P, and you'll also want to make sure that the S's are facing the right way. I painted the second and fourth stripes in red. So now I can move into adding the white to my stars and stripes. And again, I'm using one of the small detail brushes, and I'm saving the last detail brush for any touch-ups that I might need to do. And I'm just carefully adding the paint inside of the star shape, and then later I'll add the paint into the stripes. After I'm done adding all of the white to my letters, I'm going to go back in with that final small detail brush and touch up any areas where I went outside of the lines. If you do find that you have any paint pooled up in the engraved lines, you can use a tack to remove that. Now I can go through and sand everything, and even though there are 2 colors on each set of letters, I'm just using 1 block per set of letters, and I'm going for a pretty distressed look. And I'm finishing up by cleaning everything off with a clean dry rag. I'm ready to assemble, so I have my template placed in the center of my insert and taped down, and then I'm going to use the peel and stick adhesive backing to attach all of my letters, making sure that they're facing the correct way. Then I can remove my template and both of my inserts are done. I hope you enjoyed creating with me today, and if you create your own versions of these kits, we would love to see them, so be sure to share them on social media and tag us Details to Enjoy on Facebook and Instagram.